This is Greg Remke. Welcome to part two of the space exploration, economics of space exploration presentation. We ended the last section with the sort of question of who explores space and why, and discussed JP Aerospace, a company that had launched a small light vehicle up into space, basically with inexpensive balloons, spending some $30,000. This may seem like a crazy sort of out of left field technology that one might not take seriously. But if you look at the history of both space exploration, which the major advances originally came from amateurs and clubs, I'll come to that, but also the development of the airplane, a similar story. Airplane development in 1903 was the grant from the federal government to basically the country's top expert, which is Samuel Langley. And with that money, he was trying to launch an airplane. In the Potomac, he had a barge built and catapult and launched a pilot off the top with a plane he designed, thought would fly. Marching band shows up, reporters show up, there's a big turnout. It's an exciting event, except after launching, the plane just crashes in the Potomac. Tries it again sometime later. Not as many reporters show up, no marching band, launches again and crashes in the Atlantic. And this basically happened. His second launch and crash was just 2 weeks before the Wright brothers launched their plane successfully in Kitty Hawk. The Wright brothers, again, two bicycle mechanics who didn't have a lot of money, so they were innovative under their cost constraints of finding ways to test airplane flight without continually crashing planes. Langley complained that he just lacked the money to be able to do it right and launch the plane first. In fact, Langley continued to claim that his plane actually flew. It's true that it flew, it just didn't fly very far. But that's why actually the Wright brothers plane was not on exhibit or even acknowledged by the Smithsonian for almost a century, until the 100th anniversary in 2003. That's an interesting story of the people in power trying to keep out people without connections and power. So, $50,000 government grant versus innovative private sector entrepreneurs. That's an example from the airplane industry. Now, the next step in airplane development, aeronautic development, comes from contests. And it's interesting to see how this connects with the great success in space exploration from the private sector we've had in the last decade. Contests actually have a long history in promoting exploration. The book Longitude by Davis Sobel tells the story of ocean exploration. Ocean exploration required knowing where you were in order to chart courses and navigate the oceans out of sight of land. And latitude could be understood by looking at the North Star and how far off the horizon, but longitude couldn't be determined. That is, when you're in a boat and the Earth is orbiting, you don't know, unless you know what time it is, you don't know where you are in terms of longitude. So the British government set up a prize, a contest to determine longitude. And in that effort, people spent a lot of money, multiplied the contest amount to try and develop an accurate chronometer, a watch that was accurate enough that you could know what time it was and therefore could look at the stars and determine how far west or east you were for determining longitude. And once that was done, you had a huge advantage in ocean exploration. A similar contest, the Orteig Prize, was set up by a hotel magnate to pay a prize for the first person to fly single-handedly across the Atlantic. Charles Lindbergh won that prize in 1927 for the first prize from New York to Paris, first flight from New York to Paris. But the way the prize was multiplied to spur exploration innovation was key. There were hundreds of aviation prizes in the 20th century, and that pushed new development of engines, airframes, and technologies to promote the ability to fly around on the planet of the Earth. These prizes, it's argued, helped create the $300 billion aviation industry we have today. See, it's interesting, the Wright brothers' development of a successful flight didn't lead to wide-scale flying. In fact, their effort to tie up their invention with patents actually stopped airplane development for a long time, and they spent, sadly, the rest of their careers suing other people that were trying to develop airplanes. But even up until the winning of the Orteig Prize, not much money went into airplanes. People didn't take it seriously. You can see the great fun movie Spirit of St. Louis with Jimmy Stewart playing Charles Lindbergh. And in that, he's delivering the mail, except as the movie opens, he's on a train because he's crashed in bad weather. And basically, people don't believe that airplanes really are reliable means of transportation because they can't go very far. On the other hand, companies can't raise capital to improve engines and airframes because people don't take the technology seriously. The experience of winning the Orteig Prize and flying across the Atlantic, all of a sudden businesses woke up and said, whoa, you mean we can deliver parts from Paris to New York in one day? All of a sudden, people took airplanes seriously, and more money was invested in airplane development in the year after Lindbergh flew the Atlantic than all the years since the Wright brothers. So the airline industry or airplane industry really took off only when the prize stimulated wide-scale development. And there's more. Lindbergh was actually able to raise money for the flight because of the prize. He was able to go to businessmen in St. Louis and say, look, if you invest in this, I'll put St. Louis on the side of the plane, and when I win the prize, I'll be able to pay you back. So it was publicity for St. Louis that was a driving force on this, as well as the prize that then spurs a massive capital investment into the industry. In the study guide, I talk about this in more detail. You can read some of the sources. But the X Prize, which is the one that promoted the space exploration, was developed after reading The Spirit of St. Louis about the Orteig Prize. Software entrepreneurs, the Ansari family, became the title sponsors for the X Prize. And basically they said, we'll pay you for launching into space and coming back and relaunching the same craft when in a period of time. The idea was to jumpstart reusable, inexpensive space transportation vehicles. The prize allowed university teams and private sector teams to raise money. It attracted millionaires and billionaires to invest. And they ended up with some 26 teams from 7 nations investing in innovative technology to try and launch payloads inexpensively into space, people inexpensively into space. So those 26 teams combined spent over $100 million trying to win the prize. So it was, again, the prize spurred more in development. The different competitors said, okay, we'll develop this technology. We can make money with it doing space stuff with tourism in space, exploration of space, geological mapping, geomapping from the sky, various money-earning space services, and the chance of winning this prize was enough for them to be able to raise the initial capital. So the Spaceship One won the prize, and since then over $1.5 billion in public and private money have been put into the space industry. You can read about the Space X Prize and Ansari X Prize online. So this is really, and this is the winner, the Spaceship One that won the prize, again, patterned on the prize that led Charles Lindbergh to fly the Atlantic. It's a cool looking airplane, and I look forward to flying into space with the massive profits I make on my space lectures. Send me $1 and I'm on my way. So Google gets involved promoting space exploration with the same model. Google launches the Lunar X Prize. That is, the Ansari X Prize was to get a payload into space, come down, and get back up there again in a limited amount of time. The Lunar X Prize was to take a vehicle and send it to the moon and travel around the moon. $30 million for the first craft that can do that. And that's led to large-scale investment in the Lunar X Prize. Some $30 million in prizes to the first privately funded team can have a robot travel on the moon for 500 meters. So the race back to the moon is sponsored by Google with a prize, and that's again leading a lot of private firms into the space exploration business. Moon Express is one of the companies. I talked to the CEO of Moon Express, who talked about his efforts. Basically, they've hired a team of people that worked for NASA. That was originally the team that won the the robotics, national robotics contest, a bunch of college students. And they're now the team working on the technology for Moon Express for their contestant in the Lunar X Prize. Now, getting this robot to the moon depends on inexpensive space exploration, and that's what firms like SpaceX and others are doing. Blue Origin developing inexpensive space transportation models. But even the exploration side, a contest is the driving force for expanding space exploration. So not the federal government, but private money in a contest. Now, the federal government also, NASA has put money up for prizes. Seeing this model works, the government is doing this as well. You could argue on the affirmative, if this wording is chosen, that the federal government, by setting up certain prizes, could promote space exploration. And maybe people could have little check boxes on their income tax, donate an extra $2 to the Mars exploration project, so people could fund it that way. Okay, so you likely know a fair amount about the various private space programs out there. The biggest now is SpaceX. Elon Musk, who's done the Tesla electric car, which got some $500 million in government money to develop an electric car. Similarly, he's got a $1.5 billion contract from the federal government to get payloads up to the space station because the shuttle's no longer flying. So this is a private company delivering services, providing services to the federal government. So if you've got a model that wants the federal government to explore space, that doesn't mean you want the federal government to build its own rockets, to design its own spacecraft. It may be that you want a process, either a contest or a process where you're contracting out to private firms that traditionally have a better track record in developing innovative technology and operating it inexpensively. So you can read more on the SpaceX website. The new SpaceX site project is they've got the Falcon 9 rocket, which is inexpensive. Fuel is only about 200,000 of that. So the biggest is the rocket, some 50 million. That's cheap compared to government and the defense industry or space industry rockets, but it's still expensive. So he argues if you could reuse the rocket, it'd be 100 times cheaper. So Elon Musk, speaking at the Washington Press Club, says they're developing a rocket that will fly up in space, turn around, come back, and actually land. So instead of having it drop in the ocean and be lost, they're going to land it. Dropping a rocket into salt water is not a good way. It makes it hard for it to be reused. So they say they can dramatically lower the cost. They say they have $3 billion in orders now for their rocket launches. With that, they can stay profitable and continue developing space exploration technology.